Okay, hey everybody, Teching 101 here, coming to you from Japan. You can tell it's Japan because every hotel room in Japan has the Triforce on the ceiling. Everybody gets one wish. Isn't that great? It's fantastic. Okay. So, I'm having a blast right now. This is the first time I've ever been in Japan, in case you don't know. A lot of fun. Let's see, I'm staying in Chiba and filmed a podcast with Manu, with O'Hara. That'll be up, within the future. It'll be up in the future. Actually, especially since relative to time right now, this is like tomorrow compared to my original time zone. So talking with people back home is weird because it's like morning here, but it's like yesterday there. Let's see. We went to Kamakura yesterday. I got to see the giant Buddha. It was a big Buddha. It was a really big Buddha. And we went to a temple, and we're gonna go to Akihabara today. And it's just I'm really excited to see a bunch of stuff. I'm not gonna be able to spend that much time here right now, but I'm definitely going to be back someday. Just around me right now, I have a giant pile of yen, just of coins. I'll tell you what, Japan is a very cash-based economy. Like you're gonna use cash money and like coins here, probably more in the U.S. than in the U.S. It's kind of a flashback to me because every even like vending machines in the United States, a lot of them have like card that you can use, and I haven't used I haven't had to go through my pockets to find coins to get stuff out of like vending machines and gotcha machines, lots of gotcha machines over here. I've been getting a lot of stuff out of those, but like it's very nostalgic for that part. Let's see, I have One Piece Volume 111 over here. I got this at a 7-Eleven. I got this at a convenience store. The convenience stores are incredible. I tried my first onigiri from one last night, the tuna mayo one. Very, very good. So it shouldn't really shock anybody, but I recommend you visit Japan. The guy that talks about One Piece for a living on the internet recommends you visit Japan. Okay, there we go. All right, well, we got One Piece chapter 1146 today. This is obviously going to be a little bit of a mini review. I'm not going to be able to go all out on that, especially since I don't have my suit and tie. And I also don't want to yell too much because, it's kind of early in the morning. I should honestly probably even dial it down right now. But yeah, let's just get into this. This chapter is honestly not that insane. Like stuff happens, but it's very much like the dramatic vibe of it all. Like Oda is just like, yep, this is what occurs. We're not going to really drag it out too much. This is just what happens, okay? So chapter 1146, titled A Stir in the Silence. We continue on with the cover page, Oni Child Yamato and the Holy Inari Shrine Pilgrimage, Volume 31. Ulti and Page 1 have been rescued from Who's Who's base. We still don't know what's up with Who's Who exactly. We see Minatomo and Tama there, and a lot of people kind of assumed this is where it was going to go, since Odin traveled around Wano and gathered up the original 9 red scabbards. Now that Yamato is traveling around Yamato, we have a new generation of the scabbards, and Ulti is like pleading with Yamato, like literally jumps up on Yamato and is like, please let me join you and travel around and have crazy adventures. Page 1's just off to the side like, okay. Because Page 1 knows whatever Ulti wants to do, Page 1 is also going to get roped into it, so he's like, okay, I guess. Like, he just seems shocked, but Ulti has, like, tears in her eyes because Yamato saved them. And Tama and Minatomo are just kind of standing there just like, yeah, okay, I guess. So, Yamato's scabbards. We have Shinobu, Tama. Let's throw Minatomo in there. He's a top-rate carpenter, okay? It's good to have a carpenter on your crew, on your group that you're traveling around with. And then we have Ulti, and then we have Page 1. Maybe they'll meet Sasaki at some point, and he'll join in too. I'm not really sure. The big question is, which one's going to turn out to be the Kanjuro? Which one's going to turn out to be the traitor in this new generation? I'm looking at you, Minatomo. Maybe Shinobu, who knows? Okay, anyway. So that's the cover page. And now we're cutting right where we left off, atop Colin's little cloud canoe, right? And we have Gunko arriving on the figurehead of the ship. We have Colin, we have Jinbei, we have Usopp, we have Brook, we have Nami, and they're all beginning to take fighting positions because Gunko has now, like, threatened everybody, right? Especially Colin, she was like, yes, there was another child that wasn't in the school. Interesting, okay? And the battle begins kind of thing. Everybody's immediately shocked by Gunko just arriving there, right? Now, they all say, hey, this must be one of... They all click and connect the dots pretty quickly. Like, this is the human intruder that was talked about earlier at the castle, right? The one that took out those giants. So it's like, oh, there's not a lot of other humans in Elbaf right now. This has to be this is a bad person. Gunko has to be a baddie. That's the way this has to go, right? So they call her a human, and it zooms into her, and she's kind of like tightening her little cap here, and she's just like, did you just call me a human? As if she took insults to that. And at the exact same time, in the very next panel, we have Brooke, and a little question mark popping up over Brooke. Like, Brooke is like, ooh, yo ho ho ho, Now, I assumed, as I'm sure a lot of people did, this was going to go a certain direction. This was either going to go the direction of Gunko immediately recognizing Brooke as the Soul King and being like, oh my god, I'm your biggest fan, or it was going to go the direction of Brooke's running gag, like, can I see your panties, you know, kind of thing like that. But Gunko, joke's on you, Brooke, Gunko doesn't wear pants. So he could already see that, right? But it doesn't go either of those directions, though. It doesn't go either direction. We'll cut to what it is in a second, but Gunko doesn't even acknowledge Brooke. She doesn't even look down and say, oh my god, that's the Soul King. Maybe this will be later. Like, maybe she's like, oh my god, I can't believe I had to fight the Soul King. I had to be so serious. Maybe she's trying to cut, like, a persona of herself. You kind of get the impression from Gunko, she is a member of somebody from, like, the Revolutionary Army, or maybe some other island, not originally a celestial dragon. And she was recruited somehow. We don't know the whole story there on how you go from commoner to one of the highest ranking celestial dragons in the world. We don't know how that works, but there is a process for that, as we see with Loki, right? So maybe Gunko is trying to, like, present herself as sort of like, oh, I am the really badass celestial dragon, God's Knight. I feel nothing. I am above the humans. I am a god, you know, like maybe something like that. So I think in this scene here, though, when she looks down and you see Brooke looking, it seems like she's looking right at Brooke but doesn't say anything about him. The idea is, I think she did recognize Brooke. I mean, how couldn't she? It was just revealed like 3 chapters ago. She likes the Soul King's music. So she definitely recognized Brooke. And it's probably going to be brought up later, like, oh my god, I didn't know the Soul King. I mean, I knew he was going to be here, but I didn't know he was going to be so awesome. Oh, and we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes, okay? So she states that they are gods, and Usopp is like, wait, you just land on our boat out of nowhere and claim that you're a god? You sound like Eneru right now. Please don't electrocute me. Because that kind of happened. That happened with Sanji. Eneru just shows up out of nowhere and electrocutes Usopp and Sanji. Remember that? Remember Skypiea? That was a fun time, right? So he mentions, you sound like Eneru, you sound like one of the Celestial Dragons right now. Nami immediately brings up the question, because Nami obviously cares about the children. They're going to go save them, so she's like, what kind of horrible god would kidnap the children of Elbaf? What's wrong with you, really? And Colin speaks up, and he's like, yeah, those kids are my friends, don't hurt them. And then we even see a scene with them walking still in the sleepwalking trance. The fire has been put out by Jinbei now, so they're just walking over a charred branch of the Yggdrasil tree, but they're still heading to the destination. They haven't really stopped that situation yet, right? So Nami and the rest of the Straw Hats are imploring her, like, let them go free, please. And then she's like, you're so impertinent. You know, children should know when to hold their tongues. Even with our powers, you know, we can't abduct them super easily just because of how large the giants are. So she's going on that. She's talking about that. We are then cutting back to the area where the facility was, right? Now, we don't really see any dialogue here. It's just like Gunko is speaking over this to Nami's group, and then we cut over to see what's happening with Frankie and Ripley and Bonnie and Lilith's group, okay? And so remember last time we saw the giant thundercloud, Zeus's botched clone, like, attacking them. Ripley is now running away with Lilith and Bonnie in one hand and Frankie in her other hand. And Frankie has launched a radical beam, and it hit the thundercloud, and the thundercloud, the MMA, seems to go down. Right, okay, so they don't really seem like... Okay, look, if these nightmare creatures attacked the Straw Hats, like, East Blue era, or, like, at the beginning of the Grand Line, probably would have been a little bit more difficult. They probably would have been able to put up much more of a fight. But here, I mean, one serious radical beam blast from Frankie seemed to be enough to, like, knock it down. Maybe it's not out for good, but at least knock it down. And we've seen the Giants from the school. One solid hit from Kiba's hammer was able to knock him down. Saul can one-shot these things. The problem is of how it's not really so much the quality, it's the quantity. Because we now know it wasn't just, like, the 14 nightmare creatures we saw emerging from the forest. There's a lot of the revenant skeleton monsters we've seen earlier. Or maybe Killingham can, like, just keep pulling, as long as the children are asleep, he can keep Freddy Kruegering his way, pulling more and more nightmare creatures out here. So this thundercloud is destroyed. Maybe another one could just be pulled out as well, right? So that one is taken care of at least. Lilith and Bonnie are cheering for Frankie, like, you did it, right? So we are cutting back to the ship now. And Gunko states the only way that they could get the children to the Holy Land, to Marijois, was to have them, be put in the trance and walk over here themselves. So she's kind of like telegraphing her entire plan to the Straw Hats, right? She's really does seem to me like, oh, I gotta be intimidating, I gotta cut this image of myself, right? Because otherwise you think she would just show up and just start attacking, especially since she realizes how dangerous the Straw Hats are, right? Then again, you'd think the Straw Hats would have just opened fire by now already, because she's already admitted what she's doing. But we have to have the moment where she explains a little bit of her plan to the Straw Hats, right? So Jinbei states, oh, okay, so she is a celestial dragon. And Usopp's like, oh, no, not those guys again. Although, you look a little bit different than the celestial dragons we've met before. The celestial dragons they met at Sabaody Archipelago with Charlos and Roswald and everybody, right? And that is when Brooke speaks up. It's like, oh, these aren't your average, everyday, ordinary celestial dragons. Yoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. They have ascended. They are now Celestial Dragon 3. No, they are God's Knights. Brooks specifically says that. He calls them God's Knights. So in the last chapter review, I think I was talking about how out of all of the Straw Hats, the ones that would probably know the most about the hierarchy of the world government and the Celestial Dragons would be Jinbei. And I think I also mentioned Brooke. I was kind of debunking on Jinbei, honestly, to be the one, because he was a warlord. He would know. He probably has never met the God's Knights, and maybe he has, but he at least knows who they are, working for the government for like 11 years, right? So it's actually Brooke, though, that is like, yeah, you're a God's Knight. Now, this is fascinating to me, because remember, Brooke is originally from the West Blue, and he died 52 years ago. And God Valley was also there. We know the Celestial Dragons, the God's Knights, were present on God Valley, but this would have been long after Brooke had died. He was in the Florian Triangle at this point. But I have a feeling, since we don't know much about Brooke's past, that's the thing. We know he attended school once, because I think when he saw the Walrus School, he was like, how nostalgic. I remember my school days, right? So Brooke had an education, and I've always pictured Brooke, and there was a video I did where I talked about all the Straw Hats' parents, like, theories, and the Chancil went ahead and drew the different images of the Straw Hats' parents that we don't know about, like Nami's and Brooks and everybody. Go check it out. I really like making that video, and it was awesome artwork from Chancil. But, like, maybe Brooke grew up in rather a, like, aristocratic family. Not Celestial Dragon, not that level of nobility, but he was like a type of nobility maybe from the kingdom in the West Blue he came from, right? Also, he was a pirate, and he led a battle convoy for a little while, right? He had a full history as a pirate before he died, okay? He was 38 when he died, right? Most of the Straw Hats are like, in their early 20s, or like they're still teenagers, right? Now, Jinbei's in his 40s, Robin's 30, and Frankie's in his 30s as well. But, like, Brooke's been around the block is what I'm saying, okay? He might have even encountered one at one point. Don't know exactly where that could have happened, unless you want to say it was the God's Knights were the ones that killed Brooke's crew. Dun 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 dun! I don't know, don't ask me. But he knows who the God's Knights are. He says, I'm afraid this one probably holds a rank even higher than your average Celestial Dragon. This is probably a God's Knight. And Gunko, indeed, yes I am, and so she admits who she is. So, that's fascinating that Brooke is, though, I mean, Jinbei still might know, But Brooke was the one to speak up about this, okay? So let me know your comments, your theories down below about that. Did Brooke know about the God's Knights because he himself was from like an aristocratic family, so he knows more about the hierarchy of the world than like Usopp would growing up out in the middle of nowhere in Syrup Village as just like a regular dude? Would he have encountered the God's Knights at some point when he was the battle commander of that convoy? Would he have met them when he was on the Rumbar crew? Were they the crew that wiped out the Rumbar pirates? Did one of the God's Knights kill Brooke? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe one of them used poison weaponry. Who knows, right? But that's interesting for sure. So at this point, we have Gunko activating her arrow ability, her vector power, and it's pointing menacingly at Usopp. Usopp is just like, what's this arrow? It's just pointing at me menacingly, no matter what I do. Meanwhile, we have Nami there taking out Zeus out of her climb attack, and she's like, we won't let you take these children. Right, Zeus? Yeah, Nami. Whatever, let's fight. And so Usopp's running away. He's trying to get away from the arrow is not even really doing much to Usopp. It's just kind of mildly annoying him. He's just like, get away from me. Get away. It's like pointing at him, right? So Nami uses a new technique in collaboration with Zeus. We have Thunder Shark Tempo. Zeus is a cloud. And I don't know if you know much about clouds, but they don't exactly have a solid form. They're kind of gas, right? And malleable. So Zeus transforms into the shape of a shark, goes into his thundercloud form, so it gets like darkened and lightning is shooting off of it, and this giant cloud shark just goes swimming directly towards Gunko, right? This seems like a pretty good attack from Nami, and I'm sure this would have done a lot more damage if it would have hit. Unfortunately, Gunko has like the redirection vector ability, so she just kind of like whoosh, and then the Thunder Shark just loops around. Now remember, here's something else fascinating. This isn't just like an attack in the shape of a shark just for like aesthetic, like it looks cool. The shark is Zeus. It's conscious. He's sentient. He's aware of what's around him. He cannot stop this. So he's rushing to attack Gunko. Gunko spins him around. He does a U-turn with the arrow, and he's like, Nami, run! I can't stop, please! And so he's running back, so he can shout, but he can't change trajectory, because it's like all of the trajectory, all of the acceleration that he was throwing into himself just gets knocked back immediately, right? Now, as this is happening, Gunko is also saying this. She's a little bit of a blabbermouth here, isn't she? She's just dropping a bunch of information. Like, the Straw Hats don't need to know any of this. She says, the world was meant to simply vanish one day. That was how it was supposed to go. Okay, so this obviously indicates, and she's going to go further into this in a moment here, but she goes into the whole idea of like, yeah, there's people like Clover and Olvia and Vegapunk that figured out the world was going to flood, and that was not the original plan. But the original plan, they did know about it. Like, obviously, the Celestial Dragons live at Marijois, so I'm sure maybe even I don't know if all the Celestial Dragons knew about this, because some of them seemed a little bit confused when they were looking at when they were listening to Vegapunk's message. However, Gunko certainly knew, and the God's Knights knew, all right? And the way she talks about it is like, yeah, the world was just supposed to end and no one was supposed to know about it. Now you spilled the beans, Vegapunk spilled the beans, and now the whole world is going to go into a panic and there's going to be battles and wars and all that stuff was not supposed to happen. So here's a question, and I'm not going to go way into it because I'm in a hotel room right now, and it's like I want to do a whole dedicated video about this. But here's the idea, right? So we don't know much about Emu, but what if it's a situation where this was like Emu's, like, maybe not even Emu, like, themselves, like this was something that was inevitable, that was going to happen, or it could have been a direct thing from Emu, like, I'm just gonna flood the earth and just wipe everybody out, like the ultimate cleansing, right? Just everybody's gonna get wiped out except people living at Marijois, and it's like that's just the way it's gonna go. Or that was like way back in the day, this was like, man, I became ruler of the world and eventually it's going to flood, but whatever, at least it's all done, at least everything will be maintained in peace, sort of thing. Now Emu's been alive for over 800 years. I feel like living through those centuries really warps your mind and your perspective on things. I'm not saying Emu started out as a good person. I'm saying that maybe Emu had an idea for like, oh, I'm going to make the world, I'm going to try to make the world a better place. And the way compared to where it was before, because we don't know the whole situation. Apparently, at the end of the first realm, it was pretty bad, and then the second world, we also had problems. And then so maybe Emu was like, all right, I'm gonna make it better than what we had, and they achieved that. And then through the centuries and centuries, it was just like, maybe it would be better if it just clean slate, if it just everything got wiped out. And so over those centuries, just like, yep, that's the only way this can happen. There's no suffering if there's no one to suffer. That might be where Emu eventually arrived at, okay, is the conclusion, right? And now Vegapunk messed everything up by blabbing to everybody about this. There you go, basically like that. But I will make a follow-up video about that when I return, definitely. Okay, so meanwhile, cutting back to the shark being sent flying at Nami, it electrocutes somebody. We see the bones of someone being electrocuted. Everyone's like, no, Nami! It's the same joke we did back at Whole Cake where Brook is there. He tanked the hit because he's basically immune to electricity. He's a little charred, but he'll be fine. Just drink some 2% milk, maybe some whole milk for that, and you will be okay. Nami, meanwhile, is just like... I mean, Nami's standing there like, we're good, we're fine. And Zeus is like, oh, thank the heavens. Thank you, I didn't want to electrocute Nami. Poor Zeus. Zeus keeps getting thrown into situations where he has to injure Nami, and he doesn't like it. But anyway, yeah, Gunko mentions the whole thing about Clover and Olvia and Vegapunk. Usopp takes out his Kabuto. He fires a Skull Bomb Grass right at Gunko. And you'd think the arrow that was like bugging Usopp, you think that would have sent it flying back. No, Gunko takes the hit. Skull Bomb Grass, direct hit from Usopp, hits her right in the chest. Big boom, and Usopp is like, we're not afraid of celestial dragons. Take that, you bastard. And it's like, wow, cool attack, Usopp. And then we see Gunko, the top half of her body just obliterated by the attack, right? And Usopp's like, oh no, I didn't mean to kill her. Usopp, buddy, this is a God's night. Do you want her dead or don't you? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I didn't mean to kill you. Whenever I shoot the giant exploding skull bomb grass in somebody's face, they usually use hockey or some bullshit to block it. I didn't mean to actually kill you. It's like, man, you went a little bit too far there, Usopp. And it's just like, I love how even Nami in the background is like, wow, I felt bad for her a little bit there. Because, as you can imagine, well, Gunko's dead. I don't know if you knew this. This is the chapter where Gunko dies. She's just dead right here. No, she regenerates, obviously. So, the God's Knights have the same abilities as the Gorosei. I don't think Gunko is a lone exception here. Killingham and Summers and Shamrock and all the other God's Knights we haven't met yet have the exact same abilities as the Gorosei, which therefore means they are also given their abilities by Emu. Okay, now, this is a big one because Emu also used the arrow ability to stab Sabo, and we see Gunko using that ability here. However, that ability was mentioned to be a Devil Fruit ability. That was mentioned to be the Arrow no Mi. All right, so this is making more sense now. At least, maybe with the Gorosei, you immediately understood that, like, oh, they're clearly mythical zones. It's like, well, I was like, they weren't mentioned to have mythical, zones. They were just mentioned, like, what their animals were called, like the Bokotsu and everything like that. So, Emu, I don't know what Emu turns out to be, like, god of the ocean or whatever. Emu has a stockpile of devil fruits, like, probably in themselves. It's probably an ability similar to Blackbeard, or maybe Rocks, too. We don't know much about Rocks, but Blackbeard's similar to Rocks. If you want to say that Rocks also had an ability to store multiple devil fruits, I would kind of believe that as well. But Blackbeard's able to have more than one devil fruit. He has 2. Emu has more than 2. Emu had at least the mythical zones for the Gorosei, and the Kirin zone, and the Thorn Paramecia, and the Arrow Fruit. I think Emu is stockpiling a bunch of devil fruits and then handing them out to people that they deem worthy. And along with this regeneration ability, which also could be a devil fruit, it could be all linked to Emu. Like, the only way to get rid of the Gorosei and the God's Knights is to kill Emu. Emu might have eaten a devil fruit, like the regenerate no Mi, or something like that. That regenerates any injury, no matter what. I'm realizing if we're going this direction, though, Emu is kind of like All for One from My Hero Academia a little bit, but with devil fruits. And remember, like Marco was talking about Blackbeard, like his body is a little weird, and there's that multiple soul or multiple personality theory is the idea why Blackbeard's able to have multiple devil fruits. Maybe Emu has like 100 different personalities or 100 different souls trapped inside of them, and that's why they have all these powers, right? But considering we know the Arrow no Mi is a devil fruit because Oda stated it was a devil fruit, and Gunko has the same regenerative abilities as the Gorosei, so obviously had to get that from Emu, and the Abyss as well seems also directly tied to Emu. Seems very clear they're getting their whole power sets and their move sets from Emu. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the regeneration in the Abyss, but the Arrow fruit is completely separate. It's a little strange considering that Emu used an arrow to stab Cobra and attack Sabo, so that seems a little bit unlikely. But from what we have right now, yeah, all of this stuff is taken from Emu. Maybe it's like it's kind of like the soul fruit maybe, like you give a portion of your life energy or your soul to Emu, or maybe even give your entire soul over to Emu, and Emu like rents out abilities to you or something like that. Like you put your soul up for collateral and Emu can give you stuff, and if you piss them off, then he can just eliminate you with a snap of their fingers, like with Saturn, okay? So if Gunko upset Emu in some way, Emu could just eradicate Gunko right there on the spot. I feel it's something like that. But yeah, he's like, I'm sorry, I completely blew you in half. And then she just begins to regenerate, and Nami is like, oh, she's regenerating. Well, I was kind of feeling bad for her. That's just kind of creepy, though. What, you're regenerating? Creepy, right? So she's coming back out of it, and once again, the regeneration works instantaneously. It doesn't matter if her body is completely, her head could be blown off. It doesn't matter. It just glorps right back to the way it was. So she says once it starts, it cannot be undone, and no one can stop it, okay? Talking about this battle, this epic war that's going to occur now, and there's no going back because the whole world, it's spreading like wildfire, right? So there's no going back to that. So she jumps up and uses her arrow, kind of like a similar ability. Remember when Alvida used the slip fruit and they put up that slide, and Alvida was like, like snowboarding or skiing down the slide to like attack people? Gunko's doing the same kind of thing except with her arrows. So she's creating a vector, and she's the arrow is pointing directly at Usopp, and then she goes to spin down to attack Usopp. There, Nami's even grabbing the arrow and trying to move it out of the way so it's no longer focused on Usopp, but it cannot move. Nami can physically touch it and grab it. This is serious science we're talking about here. Nami can physically grab the arrow, but like cannot move it. It's pointing at Usopp, and it won't move. Like if Usopp moves, it moves as well, right? Okay. So, we then have Jinbei and Brook starting up to attack. He's like, leave it to me, Usopp, I'll take care of her. And, Brook takes out his sword, and he's like, an attack that telegraphs itself. How absurd, right? The countdown has started. The world is already entangled in the opening salvos of the coming Va. Now it's just sounding like the Major from Hellsing a little bit here. Ah, yes, the Va. It is going to happen no matter what, and all of hell shall sing. Okay, so we cut over very quickly. We see Dory and Bragi defeating some more MMAs. They cut the giant chicken in half. They killed Mega Ultra Chicken. Weep. We also see the Revenants getting run over by the ship, so they're still fighting that. And we also see Loki and Luffy, and they are just stuffed to the brim with food. Loki's on the ground, still covered in all the bandages, but he's just like super fat now, like sumo wrestler variant Loki. And then Luffy's right next to him, also stuffed, and then Hiruden's there just like, oh boy. Gunko then says, as we're seeing the scenes with Dory and Bragi and everything and Loki, it is said that the Giants' allegiance in this conflict will greatly shape how it unfolds this time. So we all understand from looking at the Harley that this has happened before, right? There were many of these great transitional periods from the first age to the second age to the third age, and now at the end of the third age. This has occurred before, and this time specifically, Gunko mentions whoever the Giants side with, that's going to decide it. Right? That's like a key player, okay? It's like a swing state, except in this case it's Elbaf, right? Okay. So the fact is, Big Mom really wanted the Giants on her side. Could have been for that reason. The government really wants the Giants on their side to the point they allied with Harald, we're going to get a little bit more about Harald at the end of this, and the fact they almost they almost recruited that, not really almost, Loki wasn't going to join them, but they tried to recruit Loki right there. So they're trying to get the giants working for them, even if it's by force, even if it's by kidnapping the children, and then it's like, oh, you're going to work for us or we're going to kill your kids. I don't know if that would have worked out well, but like that's the attempt, right? So this also is going to be a separate thing, but like, yeah, this final war, and we see giants on the mural. We see one giant on the mural, and then we have a very specific giant on the mural, which is clearly Loki. So there you go. So yeah, the giants are going to be extremely important in this final battle, which is probably going to occur after the One Piece is found, right? So Loki, Dory, Bragi, all the giants, really important. Hiruden's probably going to be more important to this story than I think anybody ever thought he would be. So, Hiruden fans, you're eating well. Let's see here. Nami is shouting, "A worldwide war? That's never going to happen." Goo-hoo. I'm sure a lot of people thought of that before World War II, and then before World War I, and then before World War Zero. Read about World War Zero. It's interesting. There is a war that is kind of referred to as World War Zero at a time. Jinbei mentions like, oh, okay, so you're trying to use the children as hostages in order to, get Elbaf under your control. So Jinbei figures it all out there. Well, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here to read this line a little bit better. "I am merely carrying out the mission. It may well turn out to be a fruitless endeavor, but I don't particularly care about the lives of the hostages anyway." And they're like, what is wrong with you? She's just like, I don't care if the children die, and we know that already because they were willing to walk into the flames, and it's like, oh, if they die, they die. We'll just bring another group through. Okay, Group B, go now. Oh, they're dead. Group C, move forward, right? They didn't kidnap all the children from the school at once, right? But she's like, hey, whether or not this plan succeeds or fails, it's whatever. I was given a mission to uphold, and that's why I'm doing it. That's how it is, right? And so, once again, is that her real personality? Is that how she really feels? Tell us how you really feel, Gunko. I don't know how she really feels. Colin, I know how he feels. He picks up his wooden sword, and he's just like, you fiend! I don't know if it's a wooden sword. Is it a wooden sword, or is it a metal sword? I think it's still a practice wooden sword, though Colin is huge. He's a giant, so getting hit by a wooden sword, that would still hurt. Anyway, he doesn't get the chance to because Gunko wraps the arrow around Colin's neck and, lifts him off of the ship. She's like strangling him. He's like, please help me. He's like, Colin, no. So Jinbei gets ready to use a 5,000 brick fist, and then Brook readies an attack with his soul solid. However, at that exact time, it's like the control of the arrows is impeccable here. Like, there's an arrow pointing directly at Usopp that Gunko is traveling on. There's two arrows pointing at Jinbei and Brook, respectively, because they're going to hit each other in a second. And then there's the arrow that's lifting up Colin. And then probably some other arrows she has active. So she has, like, a complete control over this. It's a really great ability. It's a really unique ability. I love it. So, yes, Brook and Jinbei go to attack Gunko, and then at the same time, Jinbei punches Brook's block straight off, and then Brook moves and slashes Jinbei with the sword, right? Now, they're pretty tough. Brook's head does get knocked off by Jinbei's attack. That's not that big of a deal. He could just, like, reattach it. Jinbei gets slashed by Soul Solid, but I think, he'll be okay, too. He's a tough guy, but they didn't expect it, right? So they didn't really have time to throw up Haki, or, like, I don't know about Brook, but Jinbei knows Haki. He didn't really have time to block it or anything because it was the last thing they expected. It happened within a fraction of a second. It's like, you're ready to go throw a punch, and it's like, yeah! Shit, like how that works, right? She uses a technique called Fated Arrow. Cool name. Fated. Aloe Vera? Okay. Anyway, we then have an arrow that goes right up to Nami's chin, and she's like, oh no. And then Gunko just kicks Nami square in the jaw. The arrow goes into Nami's like, oh no. And then she gets knocked clean back. All right? We don't see Nami getting hit, like, that severely, like just a dead-on smack in the jaw from Gunko into Nami, okay? So, yeah, Nami's going to be feeling that tomorrow. And then Usopp fires his shot, but now at this point, Gunko, the arrow that she used to, like, slide over to Usopp, knees him straight in the face. And remember, the power of the arrow increases velocity and acceleration and everything like that. What's the difference between velocity and acceleration? Velocity is just the speed, something's moving, right? And acceleration is the rate it's increasing the speed, right? Yeah, I know physics. Anyway, she hits Usopp really fucking hard in the face. Okay, knees him right in the face, and he's like, and then he gets knocked back. So, yeah, now I wouldn't say all of the Straw Hats are defeated here. I wouldn't say Brook and Jinbei were defeated, okay? Brook got his head knocked off. He can reattach that, like, instantly. Jinbei got slashed. I'm sure it hurt. He's not out of the fight, right? Okay. Usopp and Nami, though, well, we see them actually falling out of the Cloud Canoe. That's more of the problem. The problem isn't so much the damage they took. The problem is now they are all falling out of the boat. Colin is being lifted into the sky. Jinbei, Brook, Nami, and Usopp are all falling out. So, yeah, they're hopefully going to have to land. Now, who can fly here? Nami could summon Zeus if she's not knocked out, and maybe Zeus could help them. And then also Usopp maybe has something in his arsenal that he can use to, like, grab onto something like vines or make out like the trampoline flower or something to land on soft. So I'm not worried about them falling to their doom. They might get separated, though. Jinbei's tough. I feel like Jinbei can just tank the fall. Jinbei can just tank the fall. Jinbei falls 2,000 feet, hits the ground into a giant crater, just gets back up and just like, whoa, man. Got a little bit of a headache from that. You know what I mean? I think Jinbei's going to be fine. And Brook is very light. Brook might be able to just, like, glide to safety, right? But yeah, they're all falling down. Nami's not unconscious. She's still awake, although Usopp isn't looking too good. So Colin is being kidnapped, though, so they have to go now save him, right? And so here we now have, I think, is it Gunko or who is, there's somebody speaking over a Den Mushi here, and they're saying, "Are you ready, Killingham? To tell you the truth, Elbaf's communication network is limited. It's a shame, but at least they have one of these important points in each village." Okay, so we now cut back to the school. Killingham is now directly dealing with the teachers and the principal. Killingham now takes out Principal Kiba. Looks like he knocked off one of his walrus tusks, which is probably pretty painful. He's knocked out, covered in blood on the ground. Killingham took 0 injuries for that. Even if he did take any injuries, he can regenerate probably the same as Gunko and Summers and Emu and the Gorosei, right? Okay. So he was able to take him out no problem using his, like, trident thing that he had. So Kiba's taken out. Angie's off to the side and she cannot move. She's, like, paralyzed. And Angie mentions, he's like, "I can't move." And Killingham's like, "That's because I used my special technique, sleep paralysis." Oh, God. Angie's going to see the Hat Man. Angie's going to start seeing some weird hallucinations. I don't know if you've ever had sleep paralysis before. I've only had it in my life, like, twice. The one that was the most, memorable was I was laying on my back and on the bed, and there was, like, a giant spider on the ceiling that was, like, slowly descending and, like, about to, like, cocoon me, or it was like a face hugger from Alien, and every time I closed my eyes and opened, because that's all I could do, I could just close my eyes and open it back up, the spider kept getting bigger and bigger, and I was like, oh, no. So sleep paralysis isn't fun. I wonder what Angie's seeing, but she's immobilizing her body. If I remember correctly, like, the whole point with sleep paralysis is that when you're asleep, your body does something, like your brain does something to your, like, muscles or your, like, nervous system, so you're not thrashing around in sleep all the time, so you can't really move. And then that's why sleep paralysis is so terrifying, because you're conscious, but you cannot move. That's the scary thing, right? It's like locked-in syndrome a little bit. So Killingham sees the giant telediction snail that's on the table, right? The snail that kind of, like, announces everything to Elbaf. And so Killingham pulls up a snail, like a regular Den Mushi, that Summers is then going to communicate into. So, like, Summers is going to speak through Killingham's Den Mushi into the telediction snail, which will then broadcast over Elbaf. Why Killingham isn't going to just talk into the snail himself? Maybe he's shy, maybe Summers is more sadistic and better at intimidating the giants or better at hostage negotiations. I do not know. So he's like, "Oh, this is a telediction snail? I've never heard of this before. Summers, try talking through it. You should be able to transmit it nationwide." So then we cut over to the last double-page spread of the chapter, where Summers is like, "Yeah, sure, I'll get to that in a moment. Just hold on, I'm finishing up my fight." We see Summers fighting against Saul. There's an entire briar of thorns surrounding the entire area. Saul is shredded. He is cut up bad. He's bleeding. He's just blood on his face and covering his entire body, just covered with thorn wounds. Robin and Chopper are still in his beard. Robin and Chopper have not done anything and are still in his beard. Robin is like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening again. I can't believe this is happening again. So she's freaking out. Okay, I can kind of understand why Robin is not doing anything, why she's not jumping out and going like Demonio, because this is like PTSD for her. I don't think Saul's gonna die, because that would be awful. Oh god, if Saul died. If Saul straight up died, like if Summers just decapitated Saul right in front of Robin after we got all that crap. Oh my god, right? But anyway, I can understand maybe she's dealing with like a little bit of like panic attack right now, and maybe that's the reason she can't do anything. Saul is also saying like, Robin, Chopper, just stay in my beard, it'll be fine. Even with that, I'd be like, I don't know, Saul, it looks like you really need some help. Chopper's not doing anything either. Anyway, Summers, on top of creating the briars, because I knew this is not the only way that the thorn fruit could work. We've seen the thorns, like the invisible thorns surrounding the children. That couldn't be the only way this works. He can summon actual thorns. He can summon an entire briar of thorns, of giant thorns, to cover the entire battlefield, to physically stab somebody. He also is holding what looks like a giant kanabo, like a giant spiked club of thorns. I think he probably, like, drew his sword, and then, well, wait a minute. No, I don't think it's his sword. His sword, I think, is still in the scabbard. So this is just him just making a giant, like, thorn club, and he's using it to, like, slash Saul with. Or maybe it's a thorn whip. Looks more like a club to me, but like a kind of like blunt weapon with covered in spikes. A blunt spiked weapon, yes. But he's like, yeah, I'm finishing this up here. Saul is a former vice admiral, so he's really tough. It's hard for him to go down. He even mentions, I thought you died on O'Hara, Saul. And then so Saul is not really talking to Summers. He's just like, Robin, Chopper, stay calm. And then he's like, I'm begging you, please take care of the children. He's like talking. I think he's still whispering to Chopper and Robin, like, hey, even if I go down, make sure to keep the children safe. You got to save them, right? So Summers is like, okay, it seems like you're getting ready for your final attack. Let's just hurry up and go through this so I can finish you off and I can move on, right? I have stuff to do today, right? And then at that point, Saul finally collapses. Now, I don't know if that's he collapses because he legitimately passes out, or he's just trying to, like, oh, I'm going to pass out here so Robin and Chopper have a chance to get away. I'm not really sure how that works. But he took a lot of damage and he's bleeding pretty bad, so I wouldn't be surprised if he collapsed. All right, so Summers in the last scene of the chapter mentions a school and a library. What the hell is up with all this learning crap? A science center? What is this shit? You guys are supposed to be warriors. You're supposed to be pirates. Giants are supposed to be feared. They're supposed to be going out there to sea with swords and shields and just pillaging and murdering. That's what they're supposed to do. You were supposed to be our mercenaries, Harald. King Harald, that bastard, he really messed up everything. And Summers looks so pissed. And then that's the end of the chapter. No break next week. Which, next week, by the way, the chapter review, I'll probably be getting home like the day of or the day before the chapter's release. So the next chapter review will probably also be delayed a little bit, but I'll be back home to film it at the next one at least. All right. So it seems like, yeah, like the government struck a deal with Harald. That 100% happened. However, Harald didn't really hold up his end of the bargain, it seems. It seems like they were trying to recruit the Giants as mercenaries to fight for the government, and they were in talks with Harald to do that, but then Harald messed it up, and he went to go, like, I don't want to be a warrior, and he ripped his horns out, and he went to go, and I want to make, the children learn about English and math and stuff, because learning is half the battle, something like that, right? So I don't think Harald was evil. I'm not getting the impression he was evil. I'm getting the impression that he was naive, and he was talking to the government, and maybe Harald even maybe he wasn't as naive as I'm thinking. Maybe he realized what the government wanted, and then he tried to, like, push it in a different direction to maybe atone for that. Maybe Harald was like, wait a minute, I was about ready to make an allegiance with the world government, and then I realized how evil they were. I'm going to make sure the children learn stuff, so they're not going to be mercenaries. Maybe Harald learned about, like, the Giants have a role to play in the final battle, and he was trying to change fate. But you could change your fate if you change the Giants' outlook on warfare and battle. He was trying to, like, skew the generational lines to a different direction, where it's like, let's get away from fighting in war, because if we get away from fighting in war, maybe this big epic battle won't happen, and maybe the Third Age won't like end the way it is in the Harley or whatever. He was trying to change fate, basically, right? It's kind of like, let's say you find a prophecy that says, in 100 years the great army of this kingdom will burn the world to the ground, and you're like, okay, how about we disband the army then nothing can happen, and then maybe it like fate, like maybe the future can't be altered, so even in some weird way it circles back around to happening anyway. You can't really prevent it, kind of thing, right? But anyway, that is chapter 1146. Not a particularly long chapter, but we got a lot of really crazy scenes. Killingham defeats the teachers, and we have Summers defeating Saul, and we have Gunko, maybe not like knocking all of the Straw Hats out, but certainly knocking them off the boat. All right, so they have been that battle I would give to Gunko. Gunko won that battle. Gunko defeated Jinbei, Nami, Usopp, and Brook pretty damn handily. All right, and kidnapped Colin in the process. They couldn't really touch her. All right, so yeah. Next chapter, we're going to see maybe Robin and Chopper leaving Saul's beard to go to try to save the kids, or try to, Chopper's going to have to maybe stay with Saul because he's going to have to patch him up. And I think Summers is going to go and, say something into that snail to announce to all of Elbaf, hey, we have all your children hostage. If you want them back safe and sound, you better listen to the God's Knights from now on. And we didn't get much with Luffy and Loki, so maybe next time we can cut back to that and see what's going on there. But anyway, yeah, that's the chapter. I know it's a little bit, I say it's brief. That was like 45 minutes. I'm going to edit a little bit of this, but not a lot. Can't go really full power given where I'm at right now. But yeah, or maybe I'm in Japan. This should be where I should be at full power because One Piece. The One Piece powers are stronger even here. I did have the Baskin-Robbins Luffy thing. I filmed a short little thing I'll put up on the channel for it. I did have ice cream yesterday when we were in Kamakura. So, yeah, that was actually really fun. All right. Well, anyway, I'm going to get going because we have some stuff to go do today. We're going to go get some breakfast. And then, hope you all enjoyed the chapter review and all the other videos I've been uploading, like the devil fruit discussions. I think the butter fruit came out earlier today, so I'll probably upload this in a few hours. But, yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Techie 101 signing out. Later.